Good evening and welcome to the rest of the news. Our special guest today is Phil Russell. And Phil is an actor and a police officer. And he was in a very special movie called Acts of God. What can you tell us about Acts of God?
Well, Acts of God is a movie that's produced by a company that's actually a local company called City on a Hill Productions. They are a studio out of Louisville, Kentucky. It was a ministry that was started some years ago, and they have been producing movies and teaching Bible study resources for, goodness, I guess about 7-8 years. And so it's...
Really?
Yeah, and in fact, it's kind of been fun for me as an actor to be able to be involved with them, and I've been able to be a part of just about every one of their productions. Just small parts, but it's been a joy for me to be a part of. A great group of people, and the production quality that they have, I think, is some of the best that particularly
Really?
faith-based movies and teaching resources that you could see.
Well, now, were Acts of God their first?
No, in fact, it began with, I believe their first one was called H2O, and it was a teaching study from the teaching pastor at Southeast Christian Church, Kyle Idleman. And it was put together as resources to distribute to churches as kind of a Bible study resource. Again, the production values on those were incredible, and they have continued to grow and produce several of those types of projects with Kyle. And particularly what's unique about Acts of God was that they involved my father, who is Bob Russell, the retired minister at Southeast. And so this is his first time to work with them and put together a resource such as this. So it's a pretty exciting project because it's not just a movie. There are teaching resources, another kind of 6 episodes that will come on a DVD, will actually be shown, aired on TBN at a later date. So there's the movie, there's the teaching resources, and there's also a book by Bob Russell that is being published by Moody Publishers that will be released in April.
Really? So that is terrific. And now this is a full-length movie that's
correct,
like you might see in a movie theater.
Correct. There are, it's about an hour and 45 minutes, and it's a theatrical release, so there will be theater events throughout the country. It's not in your traditional sense where there's a big premiere and a big release. It is theater events that are scheduled, and so we just encourage people to look at our website and determine if there is a theater event in their city.
Tell us a little bit about the movie. What is it? What's it about?
Well, Shane Suter, who was at that time the executive director at City on a Hill, had spoken with me about the idea of getting my dad involved in the teaching study. And he had as a concept to deal with the problem of pain. That so many times, Christians, and we're trying to encourage others that people who are going through tragedy, through who are suffering, often say, if God is so good, why would he allow such tragedy? Why would he allow such pain? And that's a difficult question. It's a difficult question for any Christian. It's a difficult question for pastors. And
but
so
that's sort of what this movie's about.
That's what he thought. You know what's, who better than a Bob Russell to come in as kind of the wise pastor and help us work through this issue. So that was developed a couple of years ago. Dad decided that let's use the story of Joseph, someone who maintained righteousness throughout his suffering, someone who learned to forgive through suffering. And so, it's a difficult subject matter, but it's something that Dad said, I noticed that people who are going through tragedy do not look for intellectual answers. They just want to have somebody to emotionally identify with. And so you want to know, if you're going through something difficult, that there are other people who've done the same thing and come out on the other side with their faith still intact. And that's the idea behind Acts of God, a very melancholy project because it's dealing with tough subject matters. Someone who's has a terminal illness, someone who's lost a friend, someone who's lost a child. And so there's 7 lives that you follow through this process, and they are all somewhat intertwined. But in the meantime, they deal with their faith in certain ways, and some people are questioning God, but that's very real. And I think that hopefully what you identify with through this film is that you can still learn to forgive, that God can still work through these tragedies to accomplish His will.
So that's kind of the take-home message of the movie. That
if you look at the story of Joseph, you realize that here's a young man who thought he was doing things correctly, gets sold into slavery, holds his integrity with his master and thrown into prison, but still bad things happen to him. And in the meantime, he stayed righteous and honored God in all he did, and God exalted him. But even in the midst of building, having the Israelites in slavery, that's how God accomplished His will to build a nation. And I think that we oftentimes go, why is this happening to me?
Right.
And it's easy for us to say, oh, it'll be okay. Everything happens for a reason. But that's not what people want to hear. I mean, and I think the reality is that God is, His will is something we may not ever understand this side of heaven, but we do know that God is a loving God and will see us through the tragedy. And He's always promised to be with us. And I think that's the message that we hope that people get from this. And so we're targeting pastors and other ministries to hopefully use this as a teaching resource to encourage people through tragedy. And we're hoping that that people will, again, it's tough subject matter, but it's something that sticks with you and it causes you to think and pray about and again, be reminded that God will see us through.
So even though something bad happens, we can still have faith that God knows what He's doing, and there'll be an outcome someday.
Yeah, so many films, it's easy to give a simple Sunday school answer or to wrap everything up very neatly. But when you're dealing with the loss of a child, or when you're dealing with terminal cancer, when you're dealing with struggles in your marriage, those easy answers do not always come. And so I think that that's the message of the film, is that Christians can support one another through it. God will see us through, and as long as we maintain our hope and faith in God, that He'll see us through.
Now, you say there's some other resources that go with the film?
Certainly. There are teaching studies. There's a pastor's kit that pastors can purchase, and there are kind of sermon outlines and material that they can use as a study. There's the book that will come from Moody Publishing. It'll be released in April, but you can certainly pre-order that online now. There are what's called a traveler's journal. It's just kind of another way to just kind of go through the study. And so, the film, we're looking for people to go to the film and get it, be able to see it that way. But we'll also encourage people to see the kind of the expanded study, which will be available through DVDs and some other resources like that.
If someone that's watching today wanted to see this film or to show it to their friends or something, tell us how that would work.
If you want to see the film, you could go to the website actsofgodthemovie.com, and it actually directs you to how to schedule a theater event if there's not one already in your city. In fact, in Louisville, there should be some more in March, and so just watch for those. The website will also show how, if you wanted to host another event, if you're in the surrounding area of Metro Louisville, you could certainly host one in your local theater through their website. It'll kind of direct you how to do that. But also, if you want to just stay on top of kind of the schedule of when it's going to be released on TBN, or if you're interested in purchasing some of the materials, that's the website. That's the centralized website to be able to direct you to all the other resources.
Say that again now.
It's Acts of God the Movie. So it's ACTSOFGODTHEMOVIE.
One word.
actsofgodthemovie.com.
Okay, and they can maybe get some of the supplementary Bible studies and things.
Yes.
There too.
Yes. You know, it's one of those things where it's an opportunity for churches to, you know, growing up a pastor's kid, you know that the pastors are always looking for content. So so this is a good way to kind of, again, encourage them to deal with, you know, go through a study, go through a study of I think, just a magnificent character in the Bible, Joseph, one of my favorites, and to be able to minister to members in your congregation who are inevitably either dealing with that tragedy currently in their lives, or had dealt with it, or know someone who's dealing with it. And I think that's the idea, is to encourage others through this and learn how to do that, and just hopefully that will provide some relief. You know, it's amazing because there will be people, I've gone to a couple screenings, and inevitably people walk out of there and say, you know, that was me. That was, you know, we lost a child, and you know, it's tough, and there are sniffles, and there are tears that are shed, but people are encouraged by it, just as a reminder that God is still faithful, and that He will see us through.
Well, now tell us what your role in the film.
My role, you know, it's I play a soldier in Afghanistan, and my partner and I have to go through a couple battle scenes, so it's kind of the role was a unique role for me, just to do some things. It was unique in the sense that we played soldiers in Afghanistan, but it was all shot in Louisville, Kentucky. Yeah. And so, again, because the people at City on a Hill are so talented, they were able to make a quarry in Louisville, Kentucky look like streets of Afghanistan. And just a little alleyway in downtown Louisville looked like a street in Afghanistan. So, but my friend in the movie is one of the main characters through the film, as well as the episodes, and he plays a sheriff now that has come back from the war in Afghanistan, and is dealing with just post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as having to kind of deal with issues as being just a police officer and kind of a sheriff in a county in Kentucky.
Check it out. Never thought I'd see C4 this far out. These pigs are getting advanced. You guys be careful.
Don't ever do that again, do you understand me? Could've gotten us killed.
What if it had been your daughter standing out there?
It wasn't.
He's just a kid, Steve.
Is he a kid? Are you sure about that? These guys are crazy, man. They'll strap anyone, don't you understand that? Could have dropped him.
It's not your fault.
Had the chance. Should have downed him.
And they had the chance, too. That's not on you.
Oh, hey, stop. No. No.
Don't insult them.
Pasate manuna.
Tasha Kaur, thank you. Here. We did a good thing here today, Steve. We're the good guys. Remember that.
So we talked about how we could get the movie and show it. So the main thing is to get on that website.
The website will direct people to the showtimes
Yeah.
As well as because it's not in the traditional sense where it's just at a Cinemark theater. It plays through the week. It is specific what we call theatrical events, and so it's much like at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night it'll show at this theater, and so that information is on the website, but as what's happened so far, they sell out pretty quick. So we're encouraged that they're selling out. We've had, I guess, about 4 theaters that have sold out. 2 in Chicago when they sold out, and then we've had, at least as of this taping today, we've had 2 in Louisville already sell out. I think we're getting ready to have a 3rd one, if I saw the numbers correctly yesterday. So that's good news. We would encourage people to go ahead and get their tickets reserved, because you do reserve tickets. It's not just going to the theater and buying them. So you
So
reserve.
they know.
You prepay, pre-order. Mm-hmm.
Now, is there anything that the viewers can do to help with this project?
I think it's we certainly ask, because we're doing it in a non-traditional way to get the word out. It's not a big Sony Pictures release where there's trailers in the movies and on TV and radio. There are some of those, but those are usually done through the ministry itself. Certainly, because City on a Hill is a ministry, they could certainly help support City on a Hill, and I would encourage that. And just to get to know, if you're not familiar with City on a Hill Productions, to go to their website and just learn a little bit more about them. They have an enormous amount of teaching materials that, I think production quality is superb. And, of course, the teaching quality, I have to say, Kyle Idleman's one of my favorite preachers next to my dad. But so, the teaching materials you get from them and the production quality, it provides some great resources for churches and ministries. People interested in doing that, but also just to help us spread the word through social media, and to encourage others to see it. If you can go see it and you like the film, to certainly tell others about it, because that's we're just doing a grassroots campaign to get it.
And the key is to get on that website, actsofgodthemovie.com.
Certainly,
and then you can find out where it's showing, when it's showing,
yes.
And if you want, you can be instrumental in.
Yeah, we call it host. You can
host a show,
host an event. Certainly, and there are multiple ways to do that, but it doesn't cost anything to host an event. It's a unique way to just kind of reserve the theater, and as long as you hit a threshold of people to attend, they'll confirm it, and so they won't charge your credit card or anything until the movie's confirmed. And so it doesn't, just to host an event is pretty simple. You just have to go through. But again, the best way to start is to go to actsofgodthemovie.com to find out how to do it.
Yeah. So say if somebody wanted their church to host it.
Those events, there will be opportunities towards the summer for churches to host. And so there, again, the website will provide that opportunity, and that's going to come at a later date. I think Cindy Moreno, who's here from City on a Hill, can probably speak to that a little bit more. Is that right? Best hosting church events. That does come
later.
That does come later, and I think
a few
around
months
the
from
summertime.
now.
Mm-hmm.
So there are probably going to be some churches that want to maybe.
We hope so.
Get their group, their church.
The main
together.
thing is that it's a great opportunity for you to, as a Christian, just be able to relate, empathize, and to encourage other people that eventually or are currently going through some tough times.
I think this is a tremendous subject that people have problems, and sometimes they get mad at God or leave the faith or different things. And like you say, some people say, oh, if there really is a loving God, how come he allows this to happen? And all of those issues and questions that come because of tragedy and pain and things like that. And I think that this movie giving a good answer to all of that.
I would hesitate to say the movie provides the answer.
Yeah, okay.
That answer is not. But what it does is it helps you to progress into somewhat of an understanding of that God can use even tragedy for His will. And we may not know that full answer and reason why this side of heaven. But just like Joseph, when you recognize that that is how God built an entire nation, was through all of that, then you realize that God can work through the struggles that I deal with that seem very real and are very real and very tragic. And that God can somehow be glorified through that is something that you want to try to encourage people. It
seems like it takes time for the understand to get any kind of understanding about.
I think that's how, as Christians, that we can encourage one another. You know, and it's when you've lost a loved one, when you have somebody that just walks in the door and you know they've suffered the same way you have, there's something that bonds you together there. And I think there is encouragement that comes from that. And that's the idea with Acts of God, is to just try to encourage people that you are not going to suffer through this alone. And that there are ways to get through this with God's help. And maybe there's not a full understanding, but He promises to see us through. And that's the encouragement with it. And that's the uniqueness, I think, about this particular project, is it does not provide a simple, boxed answer. That it is something that says, yes, it is a very real question that takes somewhat of experience and understanding to get through. The study, I think, expands upon that.
Right.
And I think that that's where a little bit more in-depth, whenever we go to Scripture, it helps us in our understanding. And so I think that the movie is a great way to just start that conversation.
Well, the question just came to mind that if you don't have God, how are you going to deal with all these problems? I mean, just because you are not a believer doesn't mean you're not going to have any problems in this life. You're probably going to have more problems, and even though you're reluctant to say there's an answer, or at least an understanding, it's more than what the unbeliever has.
Yeah, and that's what there's a great clip in the trailer where my dad, who plays himself, the pastor, is confronted with someone who asks that question, and he says, is it how it works in your business, in your world, that the tough questions have easy answers? And he also tells another character that God is not going to let you go through this alone.
Yeah.
And I think that those are the answers that now that we can understand. And our feeble understanding and our simple understanding, that's not what people who really want. Again, they don't want intellectual response.
Right.
And what they want is to just know that they can get through it. Because when you're dealing with something tragic, you wonder how you're going to get up the next morning. How are you going to take the next breath? And I think that only through God can we do that.
If for no other reason, if you're experiencing, say, the loss of a child or something, and you say, I don't know why this is happening and all that, but just the fact that you have gotten through that sets you up to help somebody else get through it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different reasons, and sometimes we recognize them in this lifetime, and I believe that there are so many things that will be revealed to us when we get to heaven that we'll say, oh, wow, I played just a small role, but I played, indeed it was a big role. And I think that that's the greatness of God, is that He's created this wonderful world, and unfortunately sin has crept in, and that's why we suffer, and that's why there is pain. But God has said, I will see you through.
Well, and I think that time is an important factor in all of this. When something happens, like a strike of lightning, you say, oh, this has no answer. But as time goes by, maybe months or weeks or years even, you begin to say, well, maybe there was a reason for all of these things.
Sometimes you get to understand that, and you think, if I had a way to be able to advance the kingdom then so be it. Paul writes that though I may know the sufferings of Christ to be more like him, I don't think it's a prayer that many of us pray. I don't really want to suffer that way. In fact, I'd like it easy, but unfortunately, sin is in the world, and we do suffer. And so, thankfully, though, God is faithful and loves us, and I think that's where we can encourage Christians who begin to question our faith because of that.
Right.
But we can also encourage non-Christians that we're here for you. And I think if there's ever a time to witness to a friend who's lost, it's when they're dealing with tragedy. And you can't give them the intellectual answer. And instead, I think they just want to know that they have a friend and that they know that God will see them through.
Now, in the role that you played, tell me some more. What did you get out of that personally?
Well, it's always fun as an actor. I've been fortunate to be involved in several projects this year, and the majority of them all have been faith-based. And I'm excited to see that more Christians are deciding to use that medium to advance the kingdom. And as an actor, but also as a Christian, what better way for me to use what I believe are the gifts God gave me to help minister to people. And so obviously, just as the ability to be a part of a project that I pray will impact thousands of lives for God. But as far as my actual character, it's nice. I'm very privileged and honored that City would have involved me in it and play a small role, supporting role. But it's fun as a local actor to be able to do that. It's convenient for me, obviously, as a local actor to be able to be in a local production. But it's again just a real blessing for me to be a part of something that I pray impacts people for God.
Thanks, Phil Russell. God bless you, and tune in again next week for the rest of the news.
You want easy answers. But is that the way it works in your life? The really tough questions have easy answers?
Never settle. I don't. This company's a lot better for it.
There is a reason.
What is it?
I wish I knew.
It's too late.
I don't expect for you to get over what happened. You have to move on.
Any fatalities, it's not good news.
Baby, it's okay.
God never gives us more than we can handle, right?
Well, sometimes he gives us more than we can handle alone.